Accomplished lawyer and mum of three, Lisa Gallate has endured more loss than most of us have or ever will. She's here to tell us about her story, her life journey with multiple losses and being an unfortunate expert on grieving. She's the author of Hitting My Reset, a memoir on grief and how to make it fit into your life. Lisa, welcome and thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you coming in.
Thanks very much for having me.
Now, I'd really sort of like to start out by understanding your story a bit more, because you talk in your book about a lot of your griefs, but are you able to share with us who are those people in your life you've lost?
Yes, of course. So my book speaks about the persons in my life who were closest to me in terms of the death experiences that I've gone through. So I lost my sister at 21 and her partner at 26 in a car accident, which I have written about in the book, followed by my first husband who committed suicide. And then we lost my younger brother to brain cancer, and he was a father of two young children at the time. And then I've also written about my father's near-death experience from undiagnosed diabetes, my mother's long and very slow and painful demise to Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's disease, and my own experience of multiple miscarriages in trying to have our own young family. So it's been a very long journey.
It's almost unfathomable to think what you've actually been through. How do you face life? Like, how does life look?
I think life looks as good as it can, depending on your own perspective and the way that you deal with life's trials and tribulations. And I think it's very much a matter of setting your own perspective for your changed landscape as a result of the experiences that you go through in your lifetime, and whether that grief is grief from loss or from lost relationships or from lost environments or from the death of loved ones. Grief can be very painful to go through and a very long, enduring process, and I don't believe that it's something that you can immediately heal yourself from. And
I was going to say that. Is it something like, you seem like you've got it all together, but was it always like that? Like, how did you get from that grieving state to someone who can look at it and analyse and write a book about it?
I think it's a really long process, Fiona, and also at different times I still feel it very keenly, and your grief is something that can transport you into all of those memories, both good and bad, and that longing for those people to still be in your life.
And how does that longing last? How long does that longing last, and does it intensify, or does it, does it settle as time goes on?
I think sometimes it can be very acute, almost as if the grief experience that you're suffering is very new and it's only just happened as a result of their deaths. So there are a lot of triggers in our lives, particularly things like anniversaries and birthdays and Christmases, but there are also other triggers, such as when people speak to you, or you might hear a song, or you might have an experience where your environment might trigger something in terms of a memory. And at times like that, sometimes it can feel like the death is very much
very fresh, back at square one.
That's right.
Lisa, would you describe yourself as basically a positive person who sees the best in things, or do you think that affected the way your personality affected the way you've grieved? And if you have you seen people around you done it in a very different way than you?
I think in some respects my age probably helped me and also disassisted me, because I didn't have the experience of having lost a sibling at the time that I lost my sister. And so it was a very raw, real emotion that I went through that I had no prior experience of and no preparation for. Yep. I do think I'm a positive person. I think I'm also probably quite a realist. So it was through both the positivity and the realism that my life was up to me, and how I was going to live it, and how I was going to endure and manage this grief, and how I was going to make it fit into my life. And that's very much what the book is about, is how we can fit that grief into our lives.
You talk in your book about some of the practical things that you can do when you're grieving, or to help you through the grieving process. Can you give us some of those practical tips?
Yeah, sure, Shona. It's a really good question, because I think that although grief is something that we all experience. I think we all experience it differently in different ways and at different times, and so there's really no right or wrong way to grieve, but there are lots of things that I think we can do to try and manage the grief. So some things that I found useful were to find my fan club, so to find the people that really matter, that are in your network, who may not necessarily be your immediate family or your closest friends, who may be able to share and understand and be active listeners as you are going through your grieving process, and who may be able to share their perspectives as well that may be different to your own, and they may come from your wider social network. Also, some other things such as being honest with yourself and your grieving process, so you can be honest with other people about it, and so that they can learn and understand how to help you in that grieving
Because
process.
that's quite a hard process, isn't it, to be honest about grieving, because people don't like to see you crying and being upset, and or they don't know how to handle it, do they?
That's exactly right, Sean. I think it's far more about how people feel uncomfortable about those reactions and our emotions than it is about our entitlement to feel how we feel and to be able to help us process those emotions at particular times. I mean, I do talk as well about being prepared for those triggers, so those anniversaries and those special moments or events in your life.
And how do you prepare?
Well, sometimes I think it's a matter of anticipating what's going to happen, working out whether you want to spend that time or day or event or place with other people or by yourself, and what symbolic things you might do on those particular occasions. Or it might also be that you have to prepare yourself for moments that are completely unexpected, when perhaps, as I have, I've been in the supermarket and heard a supermarket song, and most of them are usually very cheesy, but they will bring up memories, and sometimes I've found myself down an aisle crying as I'm reaching for a can of beans. But it's allowing myself to feel that, or
So you allow yourself to grieve. Allow
myself to grieve, or otherwise learning how to park it so that I can acknowledge that trigger and then decide that that's not something I can feel at that immediate moment, and I will park it so that I can deal with it later on when I've got the time to.
Did you find learning to be comfortable showing grief made other people feel comfortable about you showing grief, and therefore them as well?
Absolutely, Julie. So I have found that by being honest with myself, it's made it possible for me to be honest with others. So I had to allow myself to feel and process my emotions, and in doing that it actually helped other people understand how to respond as well, because if I could be honest with them, they could then be honest with me and say, actually, I don't know how to respond. How can I help you?
That's exactly it, because so often you have someone who's close to you that might have lost someone, and you don't know how to approach them. So what worked for you? What was comforting for you with people that in your network, if they were reaching out? What do you think is okay and what's not okay?
Well, I think what's okay is that people are honest and realistic with you, and that they try and share as much as they can of their experience, and that they allow you to share and express your feelings, and that they are genuine in their listening.
Is that all you need? Someone to listen?
Someone to listen.
Not to necessarily say
you'll be okay.
The good things, that
you'll feel better in time. You will heal.
Right.
You'll get over this. I don't think that anybody can really analyse or assess somebody's ability to process the grief that they're feeling. So perhaps these are things that are not okay.
Yeah.
How much of your grieving have you allowed your children to see?
That's a really good question, Rachel, because although I talk about sharing my family and my family experiences and being honest with them about it, I have actually chosen not to be vocal and expressive in front of my children when it comes to my grief. So I do talk to them about death and the process of death and how it affects people, but I don't talk to them directly about how I am feeling or how.
Is there a reason why?
I think partly because at this stage they're very young children.
Okay. So when they're
I think as they develop and they develop their own emotional maturity, I think they'll be able to understand more, and they'll be able to process those feelings without being upset that I'm upset.
And I guess they're important people in your life, so at some point you'll want them to know about your sister or your brother.
That's exactly right, and I have absolutely shared my siblings with them, my experiences and my thoughts and my memories of them, so that they can understand the rich tapestry of family history that makes up who they are and how they
And
actually
we've
do reflect
actually
that.
got a couple, like a limited number of your books that we want to be able to share with our viewers, because there's no doubt people who are out there and they're going through grief. So we do have a limited number. If you would like a copy of Lisa's book, all you need to do is write to us at hello@thetabletv.com to get your copy. There's a limited number, so get in quick. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you coming in to spend time with us.
Pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.
And ladies, always a pleasure, never a chore to have you and have a chat. But until next week, we'll take another week off and we'll be back with more great topics. See you then.